We are back this week with the Woman Evolve podcast, and I am your host, Sarah Jakes Roberts. I am so excited about this week's episode because we get to do something that I honestly feel like we don't do enough of. So hopefully we can fix that. But I have my man, Touré Roberts is joining us this week. And that makes me super excited because one, you all know that all this year we're talking about going rogue. And while being in marriage and having a partner feels like part of just what has become the conventional norm for womanhood, I think anyone who has been in a relationship that makes a demand on your vulnerability, your trust, your brokenness, your anointing knows that in order to really become one with another person, there are some things that have to be confronted within yourself. I cannot think of any better way to talk about going rogue for the sake of oneness and unity and to become closer aligned to who God has in mind for you to be than in the context and covenant of marriage. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how love has grown us, changed us, evolved us, but also we're going to answer some of your questions. So first of all, thank you, honey, for joining the Woman Evolve podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, beautiful. First of all, thank you for having me. I know your excitement and enthusiasm about the delegation, and I get to be a part of conversing with them, having a conversation with them is amazing. So thank you for having me. I feel special.
You know what? You are special. And you have been special for the almost 12 years that we have been together. Does
Mm.
it feel like 12 years?
It feels like no, and then yes. It feels like forever, but no, it doesn't feel like 12. But it does feel like forever. If that makes sense.
At the risk of like telling all my business, since that's Ella would, you know what Ella would say if you start in your hands like that.
Six, seven.
But six, seven, marriage for me has been an incredible journey. I really feel like one of the blessings of being able to spend the last 12 years of my life with you is that it really required growth in areas where I didn't know that I needed growth. Let me tell you, one of the things, at the risk of like telling all my business, is like I really would hear about people who were married like 50 years, 60 years. And I'm like, why would you spend that much time with one person? 60 years is so long to just be looking at the same person every single day. And it wasn't until you and I got together that I really understood the beauty of building a life with one another. And so I guess one of the things I want to know, if you can reach back to that time, that dark season of your life before I was yours, if you can go back. I know we try to, suppress and avoid dark moments in our lives, but if you could retch around the 12 years and go back to the
Oof,
moment before you found me. Oh gosh, I
oof,
know, terrible.
shivering.
What is one thing that was like normal for you that was like just a part of maybe your personality or your character that you feel like you had to abandon, alter, modify for the sake of having a successful partnership?
Mm. Well, I'm going to pull that word successful out of that, and
Mm.
I'll use successful as the framework for my response. Um, Not only do we have a successful partnership, but I have a successful partner. And
Mm.
in times past, um, I was the only one that was publicly successful. And so a lot of my world and my universe revolved around me. And you don't really know that until you begin to be in a successful partnership with a successful person and your universe grows and evolves, pun intended, to become one that has success not only around yourself but around somebody else. And so for me, I had to abandon something that I didn't even know that I had embraced, and that is being the man, being the one publicly. And
Mm.
that was, and it wasn't a challenge, it was just different. I remember when you first came to town, when you first moved to LA, and started kind of moving in my circles, you were my wife. And then as God began to elevate you and evolve you and grow you, then I started to become Sarah's husband. And that was different. I am the type of personality and the type of character that says, hey, as long as the work is being done, I don't care. But I had to confront those moments where it felt very different to quite frankly not be the center of attention. And I'm an only child, so this was maybe even a deep rooted reality. And so I had to toss away or go rogue, if you would, of my insistence upon the world revolving around me. And so that was I think that was the most rogue I had to go in that season of our lives.
I'm going to answer this question for myself, but I want to dig a little bit deeper into what you said because I feel like what happened in our marriage also was happening parallel in the world, in which men were kind of being decentered from being the exclusive voices that were in business, that were maybe in entertainment or storytelling. And I think that as we begin to see women emerge more in places of leadership, that there was this underlying fear that as this balancing comes together, what does this mean for the history of traditional masculinity and traditional femininity? And is it possible for a woman to explore the fullness of her potential and ambition while also having a partner that isn't intimidated by it or isn't threatened by it? And is she going to be okay being in a role where maybe in some instances she is the one that's in the forefront and he's at home taking care of the children, where those roles are reversing? What are you sensing as it relates to your pulse on men and masculinity as we see a shift in some of the more traditional power dynamics beginning to equalize?
Well, I think that everybody, whether man or woman, everyone struggles with identity. And whether they want to acknowledge it or not, identity is one of those things that you have to settle into. And then because we all are constantly and continuously evolving, it is something that you almost have to keep your finger on the pulse of. So, as it relates to the amazing thing that has happened with women in particular, as I've often said, that the most persecuted people group on the planet is the woman because of, misogynistic paradigms, what some will call the patriarchy, and all those sort of things. The woman has been oppressed, and that means that humanity has been oppressed. And so to see, and I think this was God inspired, the pendulum swing to bring the woman to the place of equality so that humanity can be elevated is an absolutely wonderful thing. She's had a long way to go, and in some cases, she's still got a long way to go. But to see that dynamic shift, first and foremost, is absolutely incredible. Now, the flip side to that is that I think that you have good men who understand that this had to happen and they cheer it and they're excited about it. They love women. They understand the purpose and the plan of God. Notwithstanding, they still have to now, because everybody's wrestling with identity, still have to say, that's awesome for them. What does that mean for me? You know what I'm saying? Because all of us are vulnerable in the sense that we're trying to settle in on identity. And I think it's hard, but the beauty of it is we get to have our sense of what it means to be a man purified, what it means to be a man cleaned up. Everyone knows that ego is not our friend. It's never our friend. It's not our friend in partnership. It's not even our friend in business, to be honest with you. We all have come to understand that truth, authenticity, and vulnerability are the key dynamics that will create sustained success externally and outwardly. So I think that men are having to rediscover themselves. What does it mean to be the man? I had to learn to embrace the beauty in creating an environment for you to flourish, right? I always talk about the two Josephs in the Bible. right? The Joseph who gets all the praise and all the excitement and the glory, everybody wants to be this Joseph, is the one who was the number two in Egypt, who had wealth and wisdom, right? But there was another Joseph who, in my estimation, was more powerful than him, but he has a very, very short story in the Bible. And he's the one who created an environment for Mary to not only flourish, but to birth the Messiah that would save him and the world. And so I think that men are doing okay. They need support. It's going to be okay. And I think that when everyone takes their rightful place, all of humanity rises.
I love that. I love that there's an acknowledgement of the strength of masculinity showing up in different expressions and that there is space. You know, I think that we have to understand that there is space. There's not one powerful, ambitious woman that I know that doesn't still desire a space of vulnerability, a place of connection. And I feel like when, especially because oftentimes when they're out in the world, they're having to face against systems of oppression or just chart new paths that have never been done before. And there is something beautiful about coming home to a place where it's like, man, I did it, but that was hard. You know what I mean? We landed the deal, we closed the business, but it was difficult. And I feel like partnership is there's no place for ego in partnership, right? And in order for it to be successful, there is an authenticity and a vulnerability that I feel like makes it successful. When I asked you, you know, what is one of the things you had to go rogue from, it's one of the things that I was thinking about answering. And this is going to sound crazy, it's gonna sound crazy for me to say, but I really feel like I had to go rogue in order for the sake of our partnership to be healthy from a pattern that I would have never called it this until we got married. I would have never called it this, but honesty, truth, vulnerability has allowed me to give it language, and it's lying and manipulating. Like I feel like part of my brokenness that had become my norm in our marriage was this idea of really wanting to please any and everybody and also wanting to be seen a certain way. Like I wanted to be seen as smart and wise. And I know that it was rooted in brokenness because I had so many stories that were telling me that, like, you're not enough, you're dumb, you're this. And so I would try to overcompensate in the areas where I needed more wisdom, needed help, felt insecure by just twisting and contorting into a version of myself that seemed like I had it all together. And it was terrible for our marriage because I didn't have the best boundaries, but I also didn't allow you into the parts of my heart that were underdeveloped. Where our love and transparency and honesty could have really served in making things healthier, and I think us being closer. And that's like one of the hard things about marriage that I feel like is often not discussed, or maybe people haven't been able to give it language, but it is beautiful. Like it's butterflies and cuddling and hand holding and looking over and having memories, and it's all of those things. But it is also the place where a mirror is held up, and in that mirror a person is telling you, hey, those ways, or you know, the way that you show up or the way that you communicate is harmful, or it's taking away from the ultimate goal, and that is hard. It's having another person checking your work while you're doing it. Like I have this analogy in my head of, like, you know, someone looking over your shoulder while you're doing your work and like, hey, you made a mistake. There's like, dang, that's part of partnership, is like not seeing that as rejection or someone thinking poorly of you, but seeing that as help. Has That was probably one of the things that I had to really go rogue from, is letting someone into the parts of my heart that were underdeveloped.
I think, I think, but to I understand that we walk through that journey. I also think that I grew a lot because I had trust issues, and so I had to grow to a place to where I would be able to see those things and not and serve those things as opposed to wondering whether or not I was safe because of what I saw. And so God kind of has a way of growing us all in real time because it may not have been time based on my own growth and development for you to show me everything. because it took me a while to really understand my role in our partnership, is also to serve your vulnerability in a way that is not self-serving, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. No, I mean, me and you, kid, me
Come
and
on.
you, we've been through. You know what I think was like the hardest part for me too, and I think that this was another form of my brokenness showing up. Like it was so hard for me to believe that we could make it through things. And I don't mean like big things, but like anytime there was a disagreement or you would just have a bad day that maybe had nothing to do with me, I would be like, "Oh, he changed his mind or about me. You better start packing up. You better start pulling back. He's changed his mind." And I feel like that level of anxiety showing up in the marriage where a person can't even have a bad day without you making it about yourself is like another thing that I had to be willing to release. Like I had to trust that one, we were going to be in it for the long haul, right? And because we're going to be in it for the long haul, we're going to have moments where you have had a rough day, where you're tired, where I've had a rough day. And my truth can be my truth without it tearing at the foundation of who we are, and learning to lean into that and trust that. Now, that is one of the things that took me a little bit of time.
Yeah, but you know what's powerful, and I think this is for anybody newly married or 3 or 4 years in, as we look at the 12 years we've been together, the 11 plus years we've been married, like there were moments where I felt like, man, we're not seeing eye to ye. How are we gonna get over this wall? Like just a brick wall, and we always did. And I think one of the reasons why we were able to get over every wall is because we truly love each other. Like like you are my, we got all kinds of stories I'm sure we've told before, but like you're my person. And I think that this is why it's so important to marry the right person, because you have to be willing to climb over that wall. I think that if
Yeah.
we didn't have that
Yeah.
love and when we hit those walls, some walls were very, very high, so high that we couldn't even see the top. But because we loved each other, we were willing to keep climbing that wall, believing that love would get us over it. And sometimes you see couples that give up before they grow up. But I think that it's easy to do that if you really don't have the roots of love. And one of the things that we have and I appreciate is the roots of love. In my estimation, I just believe that no matter what wall we hit, first of all, because we love each other and we care for each other, we don't want to hurt each other. We're not going to manufacture no walls, right? It's going to be the
Yeah.
wall of
Right.
ignorance or experience or learning, whatever God is using to teach us. But when you marry the right person, that come, I don't care how high the wall is, how tall the tower, we'll get over it together. That love factor is so important.
We hit this moment. It was the 4th of July of 2015. And by that time, I've moved to Los Angeles. Our kids are living together. I think my bonus babies were maybe coming over like half the week and the weekend. Like we're in the rhythm, we're in the throes. And I remember, do you remember this is the 4th of July and you went out to go see a movie and you came back and we were like just trying to figure out, we were still trying to figure out how we, live with one another and build a life with one another. But I think we also knew that we had gotten in kind of deep. Now, mind you, we're married. So the fact that like we're in deep should have hit us on November 11th when we got married. But there was something about us actually beginning to build a life together that made us realize, like, hey, we're kind of in this in such a way that you can't really back out. And I don't think we were planning on backing out, but there's this moment where you realize that like my life won't function without you in it. You know what I mean? And I don't know how I feel about that. As a
Mm-hmm.
strong, independent, I can do things by myself. I don't need nobody. To come to a place where my life cannot function without you, that was so scary.
Mm-hmm. I hated that I needed you.
I remember he came home and I was looking at him and he was looking at me. And we could tell that things had just been a little awkward and we were trying to figure out what it was. And he finally, I don't know if it was me or you, who finally was like, you know what? I need you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I was disgusted at the notion.
Needing
that I
somebody?
need. Come on, I miss the wholeness. You know, two halves don't make a whole.
Need?
I'm that guy. And and I remember, yeah, one of us broke. I can't remember who it was, but we were mutually smitten, so it doesn't even matter. But one of us broke, and it was like, you know, we had to like, I
Mm, mm,
need you, and the other said, I need you too, baby. And that was a powerful moment. And we're not talking about no codependency. We're talking about
no.
a God created and formed yin and yang dynamic, pieces to a puzzle that fit together. And if those pieces of that puzzle are not together, then that puzzle of purpose and passion and love is incomplete. And there was a healing in our honesty about the fact that we need each other, and that was a turning point in our marriage.
Don't you feel like if we're talking about going rogue in relationships, like, don't you feel like that's one of the things, like,
Mhm.
when is God ordained? Like, you got to do all of the
Yeah,
qualifiers, right?
yeah.
You know, watch Five Keys to Identifying Your Soulmate. It's on YouTube. It's a video that my husband did about relationships. It has millions of views. Once you go through all of these qualifiers and you're like, you know what? This is my person. God has brought them into my life. I'm going to surrender fully to God's plan for my life, which means to allow this person fully in. When we talk about going rogue, are you ready for this? If you're listening, you are going to have to allow yourself to need someone.
Ooh. Mm,
You're going to have to allow yourself to need someone,
mm,
which is going to be counterculture, counterintuitive to everything that you've been teaching and building about yourself. You know, I got to be able to do it by myself. I got to be independent. You don't need nobody. Don't nobody, you know what I mean? We feed ourselves this in order to survive. And it could be true for a season. But when God brings someone into your life, you have to surrender to the reality that in order for your life to become the fullness of what God has in mind, you are going to have to allow yourself to need another
mm.
individual. And that,
Baby, baby, you just ate with that. What is it? How'd it go? What is it? Is this one? Is this one right here? Yo, this one. Okay. Yo, you just man, I never thought about that because you're right. Like part of the culture, or I'll call it subculture of the woman taking her place. And I thank God that she has and she continues to do so. Is she did have to fortify herself from the
yeah,
thoughts and the opinions and the ways that things worked and moved, and to really focus and not have the support that she needed to get there and really focus. And then, but what happens when you get there? You know, wherever there is. What happens when you get there and you're still fighting like maybe you won already. You won. Take the gloves off. And the idea that you have to go rogue away from the very thing that was
the
a
very thing.
that was a part of you getting to where you are. Oh my God.
It's
That's
terrible.
profound, honey. Ooh, shucks.
It is. I mean, I feel like when I met you, I had decided like I'm not letting nobody play in my face no more. I'm gonna
Mhm.
take care of me and my kids, and I can do it by myself. I'd bought a house, the car. I mean, I was taking care of myself, and I was
Mhm.
like, you don't need anybody. You don't need this fairy tale. You're gonna be fine by yourself. And then I met you, and I wish I could say that immediately. I was like, I'm gonna throw all of this away. But I was like, I'm not about to let him just walk around this earth breathing air without me. So, like, I'm going to have to do something because I'm not going to let him just walk out my life. So, here I am trying to hold on to who I have become, trying to respect and honor like the boundaries that have allowed me to build a life and get focused and to not let nobody play in my face, while also trying to build a marriage with someone whose perspective makes mine better and whose protection makes me better. And those two competing identities,
Mm,
they had to blend. I didn't lose all of who I was,
mm,
but I had to find a way to let them blend. And I think that's the fear for a lot of women who've gone through heartbreaking relationships is like, I'm finally on this other side of healing. I don't want to let her go for someone else.
mm,
They have to find a way to blend though.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear this for somebody, and it's just two words: trusting again. You know, because you're right. When you just described the internal turmoil that perhaps someone, woman or male, who has experienced, the trauma in the past, whether it's the trauma of fighting to break the glass ceiling, or the trauma of being in a relationship that stripped away a sense of purpose and identity, or what have you. And then God does bring you into the new season in the career or in the entrepreneur endeavor, or God does bring you into the new season where you have a man who is nothing like what you experienced before. And now you have to wrestle with, quite frankly, part of your identity, because you had to become that to get there. And yet that's one side of you. And then there is this new side of you that you haven't met yet, but that you have to be in order to make the relationship work. And then you've got the pre version of you, pre hurt, and you've got all of that arguing with one another while you're in a relationship. That's exhausting. How do you just let go and let God?
Mm. I think it's trusting. I don't even want to say, I think it's trusting that who you have become is not temporary, that you really learn those lessons. Sometimes we cling to the lessons because we're afraid that if I forget, I'll end up in the same situation. But when you really allow what happened to you to metabolize and to change you and transform you, to trust the wisdom that you have gleaned as a result of your experiences is now a part of who you are. So, I'm back in school and there's so much information being thrown at me. It's like sometimes I don't know what I'm supposed to remember, what I'm not supposed to remember. But what I have learned is that I ingest the information. And then when it's time for me to take a test or it's time for me to have a conversation, that I'm able to pull from it with ease because it's all it like deposited well. You know what I mean? Like I received it. It
Mhm.
was metabolized properly, that even though I'm not clinging to it or trying to hang on to everything that's come my way, I'm able to pull from it and extract from what I've been exposed to. And so I think it does come down to trusting when you have done the work, like whatever that means for you. Like I sat in it, I understand how I got in that situation. I understand that, there was some pride, there was some hurt. Like, I really understand how that became a part of who I was. And I know who I want to become on the other side of it. I think there is a trust, but I don't think you can trust it if you're constantly like sweeping it under the rug and just trying to survive. So, if it's just taking pieces and chunks of your life, right? Because sometimes if we take all of it at one time, we'll be overwhelmed and ready to throw it away. But like, let me examine this one aspect of my life
Mm.
and the mentality I had going into it and who I was in it and what happened on the outside of it and what I know about people that I didn't know then, what I know
Mm.
about myself and what I'll do from a place of desperation or what I'll do from a place of depression. Let me understand wwho I was to really look at
Mm.
myself so that I know that that's in me and to really trust that I'll see the signs differently, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm not the same person that I was. I'll see the signs. I'll make better choices. I'll take better
Mm.
care of myself so I don't have to worry about repeating who I was. And also, I can be fully present in the potential of what this could become.
Honey, that's so powerful. Because when you start talking about trusting again, you're talking about trusting yourself, right?
Yeah.
I'm not the same person who got hurt. I'm not the same person who got hoodwinked and betrayed and set up. I have changed. There's this passage, one of my favorites in Hebrews, and it says, "Cast not therefore away your confidence." And that word literally means, a Greek word, it means expectation. It says, "Wherein there is great reward." And of course, he's talking to a very oppressed people. People have been through a whole bunch of stuff because of their faith. And Paul says, don't throw away your expectation. And that's what happens in life. Oftentimes, we get hit and by many things, and we get hit so hard that we lose our expectation, we lose our optimistic expectation about good coming our way, so much so that when good walks right in front of us, we can't even see it because we're not expecting it. And so it is, I went through it, but God delivered me. He brought me through it. It didn't kill me. If it didn't, you've heard the old adage, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So I have become something, and I'm not going to let what I went through, which is a part of shaping me into who I am, to keep me from expecting, believing, and hey, knowing that good things are coming. I expect to be treated well. I expect to have a partner who will support me. I expect to, for listen, tell you something. For all that I went through, I'm expecting double for my trouble. And so it makes me all the more
Yeah.
optimistic. And I can rest in that. I can trust again because I know who I have become as a part of it. I'm stronger now. I'm wiser now. And I don't have to protect me. I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
yeah. I want to say that, and then we're going to get into some mind your business questions about relationships. But I do think it comes down to trusting yourself again and to trust those lessons. But you know what I also think? I think you also have to find a way to have compassion and love for who you were then too.
Mm.
Because I feel like part of the reason why we can't trust ourselves again is because we hated who we were in that moment. Like when I think about my own life, like I can remember, even though I have moved to a place of compassion, I can remember like hating that I was that stupid. I can remember hating that I did some of the things that I did in my previous relationships, like hating that I would just, put myself on auction, hating some of the people who I allowed access to my heart and my mind and my soul. And I can remember just hating that I was that person. And it's hard to trust yourself again when you hated who you were in that moment, but I think if you can find a way to trust yourself again because you realize that that person was really doing the best that they could to try and fix a hole that was only God sized. And
Mhm.
they didn't know that it was a God sized hole. And so they were trying to let anything that could feel them or make them feel touch a part of them that was only meant to be reserved for relationship with God. I feel like that was helpful for me too, because it's hard to change yourself and hate yourself at the same time. And I think that that's why you kinda end up having these huge regressions is because you're trying to forget that that part of you existed, but what would it look like if you embraced it? That is who I was. And, when I look back on it, yeah, I would have made different choices, but I would have only made different choices because I know the outcomes now. But in that moment, I did the best that I could. And now that I know better, I'll do better.
Mhm. I love
So,
that. I
that's
love
it.
compassion towards that version of you. And then you also are doing the new version of you a disservice because I have a saying, about regret. And the reason why
Yeah.
I'm not for regret is because regret is charging the current version of you with the crimes of a previous version of you. And that previous version of you doesn't even exist anymore. And so yes, you forgive that version of you and move on. But why does the new version of me have to be accused and judged? And so that's what kind of regret does. Regret, like I'm listen. Let me tell you something. I don't have any regrets. Are there some things that I wish that I would have done better? Sure, but the I that wishes that he would have done better didn't exist at the time that the
That I
opportunity
did
to do
what I
better.
did.
Right, exactly. So it's kind of not fair. And it's not fair to the current version of you. The current version of you has obviously evolved because you could look back and say, what was I thinking? Well, as you think, you are, which means that you are what you think. So if I'm thinking differently, I am something different now. And that is something to be celebrated.
Love it. Okay, let's get into some of the let's see if we can get at least 2 or 3 of these. We have a lot of them. And you're gonna come back. We're gonna talk about all different types of things this year because I'm gonna put myself on your calendar because I have
Hey,
access to it.
hey.
So we'll see you more. But okay, so the first question says, "Hi, I'm currently in a relationship and we are discussing engagement soon. I've been warned not to perform or show up as a wife before I am married. I am wondering, as a woman, how do you define the lines between girlfriend, fiance, and wife when it comes to behavior and mindset?" This is a great question. But I want to ask, before I answer it, baby, I want to know, will he buy the cow if he's getting the milk for free?
Oh
Will
gosh.
he?
Well, it all depends on what the milk is. You know,
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see
yeah,
what you're saying.
it
Amen.
all depends on
Hmm.
what the milk is.
Is it
Um,
skim milk? Is it 2% milk? Is it whole milk? You understand what he's saying? Is it almond milk? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Sometimes you got to give them almond milk, but you got whole milk on reserve, huh? Okay, go
yeah.
ahead.
I don't think that you should withhold who you are from someone that you are seriously considering having a future with. Because I didn't marry you. I didn't choose you to marry you for who I thought you would be later. I married you for who I saw you as, and I said that woman is my wife, right? And so I don't think that you should. Now I do think that you ought to have boundaries. I don't think that is what I teach my girls. Guard your heart, right? Give your heart slowly, because once you give your heart entirely, it's hard to get it back. And so as you walk with a person and get to know a person and discover certain patterns, then you release yourself and all you have to offer in increments as the consistency of the gentleman begins to prove that it's worthy of you. So giving your heart is giving you. So that's how I would say. I wouldn't want you to. I don't want to marry you and then I get all of the person that you are. I'm not talking about intimacy. Let's just cut to the chase. I'm not talking about intimacy. I think that intimacy is so important and so valuable that you need to be absolutely sure, the both of you need to be absolutely sure on the same page before you move there and and waiting for marriage and all that kind of stuff. But intimacy comes in a lot of different shapes, forms, fashions, and flavors. I think that your heart is the issue. He needs to see your heart before he
Yeah.
knows. This is my opinion. He needs to see your heart before he knows that you are the one that he can trust his heart with. And so don't so be yourself with boundaries.
I agree. I think, as it relates to performing as a wife, I think that when you're in a relationship with someone, that they should be able, especially over time, like as you're getting to know someone, they should be able to access as much as is there. Because the reality with relationship is that as you build a life with someone, there's going to be parts of you that you didn't know existed that you'll be introducing to a partner. But I think you go from your favorite color to maybe some of the more painful moments in your childhood over the process of time, and how they've shaped you and what your dreams are over the process of time. And I think that that is totally acceptable, whether it's girlfriend, fiance. I think that that's what happens when you experience intimacy with someone. But I do think one of the things that we've even talked about as it relates to then building a life with someone, where like, I need you to do my laundry, or, my bills don't work unless we're together. Like that part of building a life with someone, I do think is something that should have the covenant of marriage connected to it, because we're talking about building a life that is so tangled together that I don't know where you end and I begin. And I do feel like that is something that should be reserved for marriage. Now, you may have to take your heart back from someone as a girlfriend, maybe even as a fiance, but in a marriage, I do think that when you start, my bills don't work without you, my kids can't function without you, I think that those are things that should be reserved for marriage. In addition to, like PT talked about, intimacy, like, you can't just be getting these cookies. You know what I mean? Like, we need to really know one another deeply and well. I need to know that you're trying to spend the rest of your life with me, that you're not out here swiping it, swipe or no swiping. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we need to make sure that we're on the same page about that. But I do think, even outside of physical intimacy, that many times we end up just kind of functioning and building a life with people. And not to say, I will say this, because there are plenty of stories of people who maybe their relationship started this way and then they decided to get married, and they have some success stories there. But I think that as much as you can, when you do have a choice, to say, there are parts of my life that function as an independent person that I want to continue to allow to function from a place of independence until I have some assurances and insurances that come with marriage. That's my 2 cents. Anything we need to fix, we can fix. um okay. So, well, we kind of answered this. Someone wanted to know, is it possible to trust again, heal, and move on in a marriage? Oh, this has got a caveat: after infidelity. I'll say yes for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I'll obviously, I'm gonna toss the PT, but for sure. And there are a lot of couples who share their stories about experiencing infidelity and building trust again. That isn't an experience that I have had where I've been able to trust again and heal, but listen, my testimony is not everyone's testimony. But one of the things I will say, just from someone who is a consumer of different stories and different experiences, that part of what has made trusting again and healing again, and Carl and Laura Lentz talk about this a lot on their podcast, and so does Tina Campbell, and her husband, Teddy. I think it's Teddy and Tina Campbell. I'm looking at their Instagram name in my head. They talk about healing after experiencing infidelity in marriage, but a lot of it has to do with radical honesty. You can't heal from something that we aren't being radically honest about how it happened and why it happened and the impact that it has had, and what does change look like and how do we keep it from happening again. But it is possible. It's just, from what I understand, that it takes work from both people, a willingness to allow that person space to change, and a willingness to allow that person space to heal from the impact of it. But PT, what say ye?
Yeah, I think with God all things are possible. I want to start there. I do think that it is important not to underestimate the impact of infidelity, the impact of the violation of trust, and I do think it depends on the histories of the individuals. I mean, there's some people that, man, trust is their thing, and trust is one of those things you can't like partially trust somebody. Either maybe you can do that in business, but you can't do that in a relationship, not in a marriage. And so when trust is violated, it does contaminate trust. And it's kind of almost like the body. I mean, the body can recover from some viruses, but then there's some viruses that kill that particular body. They look at COVID. I mean, I don't want to digress too far, but COVID killed some people. Some people survived it. It just depends on the makeup of the person, the emotional makeup of the person. But I do think that when it is ordained to work, with, to your point, honesty, as someone who trust is a big deal for me, I would need to reverse engineer the infidelity. I would need to, if I were able to understand all of, which requires radical honesty. If I was able to understand all of the dynamics that went into the infidelity, and I can see grace, and I could see, repentance, and I could see a way forward, then it's possible. And to a certain degree, that level of openness, honesty, transparency, and intimacy could, in a weird, bizarre, strange way, actually strengthen the bond. And so with God, all things are possible. And I do think it will work. But again, it kind of goes back to that love thing. If those roots of love aren't deep enough for you to really want it, then you might as well move on, because there has to be a why. It can't be
Yeah.
I'm going to stay together because the Bible said what God has joined together, let not man put asunder. There's a lot of nuance to that passage. It has to be, you have to have a conviction about the marriage. You have to have a love that's strong enough to scale the wall of infidelity.
Okay, and before we go, PT, a lot of questions that people have is not just like how do you balance it all, but like how do you keep your bond fresh in a marriage where you're working and raising kids and tired and dreaming? Like, what are some tips that you would give for, just keeping your love alive?
For me, the most important relationship in my life, the most important human relationship in my life, the one that feeds me, keeps me sane, keeps me aligned, balances me, makes certain that I can show up in all the spaces that I'm called to show up, lead, govern, and have impact in, is my marriage. And so I prioritize my marriage. And Sarah and I, we have a covenant, man. God has blessed us in a number of ways. We're unimaginably blessed. But we also are like, we got a pinky promise. Like if all this that these doors that have opened and these things that are happening in our lives, if for 1 second it begins to threaten our marriage and our family, we will shut it all down, sell everything, and live in a one-bedroom apartment if it means we're being together. And so, yeah, we both are called. We're both the parable of the 5 talents. We both have multiple enterprises, multiple gifts, multiple. We are multiple, and then you put that together, and that's a multiply multiples. And so all the opportunities are there, but we connect. We never get too far away out of the boat in those things. A lot of those things, if we don't do it together, we talk about it together, and we just keep the main thing the main thing. And for us, the main thing is being together.
For sure. I think one of the greatest things that we have done too is like we have made our own definition of what date night looks like. There have been times where we like got dressed up and went to dinner. There have been times where we put on sweatpants and just watched movies, that literally hop movie theater, hop from theater. And then there are times where we just close our door and watch Chicago PD. And I feel like allowing ourselves to remove the pressure on what connection has to look like, or because it has to look like someone else's, or it's not enough, has been a benefit to our marriage. And I think also what keeps our love kind of fresh is that we maintain a posture of honor towards one another. We're not perfect. Of course, we get tired and we're like, you know what? I don't think that you're appreciating me enough. But for the most part, I will say 95% of the time, we are going throughout our day realizing that there are some things that we are able to do because the other person is making a sacrifice that allows it to happen. And so part of what keeps our love fresh is seeing the invisible way that our lovers love, their strategy, their wisdom, their care has allowed us to experience whatever moment we're standing in. And I feel like that keeps it fresh, even without us having to do anything, but to just see our life and the role that that person plays properly.
And we work hard. We work very, very hard, very hard. But we also don't take life all that
It's
seriously.
not that
It
serious.
ain't that serious.
We gonna be honest with you,
Yeah.
even when it come to these kids, we be like, you know what, forget these kids. like, I'm not about, you're not, one thing about it is you're not finna stress me about it.
Mm-mm.
No, absolutely not. No, we don't put we should, maybe we should, we don't put a whole lot of pressure on ourselves because it's all God's anyway. You know what I mean? I'm just here trying to do the best I can to translate what he's saying. But when I can't translate, we're just going to go with the flow and just depend on body language and body movement to get us there.
Delegation, the jokes that we have, the
Very.
time that we had in the car. Sometimes we don't even want nobody to drive us. We want to drive ourselves because we're gonna
No.
laugh
Mm-mm.
and laugh and that's but to keep it light, to keep it light, to keep it love, and to stay lifted. It ain't at the end of the day. It ain't that serious. Well, listen. We're hard workers. We're
Yeah.
gonna do what we're gonna do. We're gonna raise our kids, but we're also not gonna let this life take the fun out of this
You're not
life.
finna no,
Mm-mm.
you're not about so you
No.
know what? All that said, when you talk about relationships, marry your friend. Marry your friend.
Yeah.
That makes all the difference because you need a friend in this life. And if that friend is also someone who you get to build a life with and build businesses and babies and ministries and books and nonprofits, all of that's amazing. But make sure it's a friend. So that's it. I love you. Thank you for coming on my
I
podcast.
love you too. This is fun. I gotta get you on mine.
That would be an honor and a privilege. I feel very called to your podcast. Yes, if people are listening and they want to learn more about your brilliance, but they don't want to get beat up, but they
Mm.
want to learn more about your brilliance because it's a Woman Ball podcast. They can't call you too much brilliant
Yeah,
because
that's
we're trying to
your.
keep the sisterhood alive. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You can't just be like, they can't learn too much more about your brilliance because we sisters, and I would hate to have to do somebody crazy. But
Mm.
if they want to learn more about just what you're doing, where can they find you?
Everything Touré Roberts, at Toure Roberts on all the social media platforms, TouréRoberts.com, and the Call podcast. I think you'll appreciate it.
Yes, I will tell you that, one of the things that I love about my husband's purpose and his calling is that I feel like God's given me the gift to connect with people from different walks of life, to maybe meet them where they are and to journey with them. One of the things that makes our partnership powerful is that my husband has this macro perspective of the world, of the kingdom, that helps you to understand, yes, where you are, but also how do I begin to move the needle towards destiny and purpose with intention and utilizing all of the tools and technology that are available to me. So when you listen to the Called podcast, this is for anyone who feels like there is something on me, there's something in my life, there's something about this idea, but I don't know how to fully bring it into the earth and to scale it in a way for it to have meaningful impact. The Called podcast is an incredible tool to help you do that. And so, we can kiki and mind people's business over here, but also when you're ready to really get real serious and intentional about that thing that God has given you, I highly suggest that you tap into the Call podcast. So thank you, baby, for who you are in the earth and who you are in my life. Happy Valentine's Day to
Happy
you.
Valentine's Day, baby. Love you.